All right, well, welcome everyone to ACG Kentucky's Deal of the Year 2021 Awards. I'm Matt Varian with BKD CPAs and Advisors. I also serve as the president of ACG Kentucky. So I want to take a moment to welcome everyone. As an organization that's focused on deal flow and the companies that are involved with it, this is always an exciting event when we can honor companies in our own backyard for the transactions that they're doing to grow and change. So always excited for this one. Before we turn it over to Bill Strench as our MC, just want to run through a few housekeeping items. First, would be remiss if we didn't extend a large thank you to all of our sponsors. A special one we want to highlight here is our event sponsor, Frost Brown Todd. They do a lot of the legwork to make this Deal of the Year event possible. Bill will speak to that more in his comments, but there's a lot of legwork that goes into this event, and he and his team play a large role in that. Also want to thank our annual sponsors, Denton's, BKD, MCM, and Weller Equity, as well as our chapter or our virtual table sponsors, which are EY, Strothman, Todd Asset Management, U of L, Vaco, Old National Bank, Louisville Business First, and then the aforementioned Frost Brown Todd. It's the support of sponsors and the members who make the programming we do possible, and their continued support during this time has been valuable. A lot of these sponsors are longtime sponsors of the chapter, so very thankful for that. At this point, I'll turn things over to our Master of Ceremonies. Bill Strench is a partner with Frost Brown Todd. He sits on the executive committee of our local chapter, also a longtime participant, active in the chapter here. So Bill, turn things over to you.
Thank you, Matt. And this is our 6th Deal of the Year that this chapter has done. It involves a lot of work on behalf of a lot of people. And I'd first like to highlight our judges. Alan McDonald, Ken Berryman, Brad Smith, and John Sweeney all were involved in the judging process. And it involved taking a detailed look at all the deals that occurred in this local market in 2020. And surprisingly, with COVID, there was a substantial number of deals and a substantial number of really interesting deals that occurred during this period. So it's a very difficult process for the judges this year to come up with the winners. In fact, we came up with 2 winners this year because of the quality of deals that we saw this year. As part of this process, we always have an observations on the M&A landscape. And we're very pleased this year to have Sean McNally, who's a partner at Prairie Capital in Chicago, to give the M&A landscape. Sean has almost 20 years of middle market, private equity, and investment banking experience. He currently serves as a partner of Prairie Capital and is a member of Prairie 7's investment committee. So I'll turn things over to Sean at this point.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. And thanks to the ACG Kentucky chapter for the invite and acknowledgement with Family Allergy. I'm excited for everyone to hear from Kay and Jim here in a little bit. I was asked to provide a little bit of an M&A landscape update, and I think a lot of us have access to similar data sets. And so thought it may be a little bit more interesting to dive in a little bit more specifically about what we're seeing in the lower end of the middle market here at Prairie, and put some kind of real world stats behind kind of how we've dealt with 2020 and what we're seeing heading into 2021. I won't make this a commercial about Prairie, but I'll give you a little bit of overview just so you have some context to the data we're seeing. We recently raised our 7th fund about 2 weeks ago, actually. It's a $450 million fund. And it's just enough to keep us in the size range that we're looking at. We've got 97 platform investments, 14 active, 83 that we've exited out of. And if you flip to the next page, you'll see that we have a broad industry focus. We focus on a number of different areas, but we're looking at kind of growth buyout businesses held by founders, backing management teams with a partnership approach, so we can, in partnership with the teams, make investments so the companies can scale more rapidly. And hopefully you'll see some of those attributes when you hear from Kay and Jim in a little bit. We're looking at sub $100 million revenue businesses when we make the investment, looking to invest somewhere between 20 and $45 million in enterprise values up to about 120 and 150. So we define that as the lower end of the middle market. It's all we've known, it's all we've focused on for the last 25 years. And so as I start overlaying the stats that you'll hear in a couple of slides, I just want to present a framework that's specifically what I'm targeting here today. You can see in the next slide, we have kind of a broad industry focus. We have certain areas that we have some experience and a little bit of expertise, although we're always hesitant to call it expertise. And I'm sure I see Jim and Kay nodding violently over the Zoom call right now. But we spend a lot of our time in healthcare. It's about a third of what we do. And we overlay that kind of industry expertise with a core geographic focus on about 30 to 40 different geographies nationwide where we can really penetrate, build networks here, and build relationships that will overlay some good deal sourcing, which we'll talk about in a second. As you can see, kind of some of the overlaps with kind of the ACG Kentucky region. We look at Louisville a lot of South Indiana, certainly areas in Ohio that pocket and Tennessee that pocket and overlay with a lot of your sister chapters are areas that we spend a lot of time and attention on. And that's really what led us to the introduction to Jay and Kim at Family Allergy, or Jay and Kay and Jim at Family Allergy. We targeted family in about 2016 as an interesting investment in an interesting space. And I think we were introduced to Jim probably late 2016, maybe early 2017, about a year in advance of when they decided to pick a partner and go to market. And so just again, it gives the example of how we like to build relationships and focus on areas like in the ACG Kentucky region, where we can kind of build relationships and form partnerships. You can go on to the next slide here. I think this is just, it gives a little bit of context for when we talk to the Family Allergy team, but our strategy is to partner with the management team at the board level, overlay a strategy where then we can kind of collectively make company building investments, which we think is human capital, certainly add-on acquisitions, which I'm sure we'll be talking about here today, and various other kind of pockets where we think those investments will help the businesses kind of scale more rapidly. So that's the area we focus on. We're growth investors, and the bent that we look at when we approach the market is kind of has a growth angle to it, really in areas where there's not a private equity investor before and the owners and entrepreneurs are looking for a partner. So that kind of gives you a little bit of context of Prairie, just a little bit of how we got involved with Family Allergy. I don't want to steal Jim or Kay's thunder when they talk about the business, but hopefully give a framework of the stats we're about to share of what we've seen in 2020 and what we're looking at in 2021. So if you kind of flip to the next slide here, this is kind of our data that we track. And so this is proprietary data from Prairie. We tend to look at, kind of somewhere between 700 and 1,000 opportunities a year. As we kind of grown, we put a little bit more of a focus on our business development. While you saw up through 2019, our metrics are growing. That is also a reflection of just what we're seeing in the market, right? More businesses coming to market looking to sell. These are kind of generally within the framework of what I say Prairie looks at. So you're not going to see a lot of private equity held deals in these numbers. You're not going to see, $500 million opportunities. You're not going to see $1 million opportunities. This is kind of squarely in that target of sub $100 million businesses owned and operated by entrepreneurs. And 2020 was a challenging year. Obviously, this is year as a whole. So we were down 23% from opportunities that we looked at. And as you can imagine, in March, April, and May, you can see on the chart on the right there, was drastically smaller than what we saw at the same period last year. About 50% of the deals we saw in March of 2020 versus 2019, and 30% in April. I don't think that comes as a shock to anybody on this call. I think what comes to a shock, certainly to me, and from what we've seen, is that quick rebound, and that purple line not only catching up with that gray line by fall of 2020, but actually surpassing it by the end of the year and heading into 2021. In April, we weren't sure when the next opportunity was going to come and if anybody would have the capital or the confidence to make that type of investment, particularly in the lending market and the capital market. But as we saw, the recoveries were very quick, and I think that's similar to what we saw at Family Allergy, just as a specific example. And so if you look at the second half of 2019, we were flat. And so in terms of deal flow that we saw, we were actually kind of flat for 2019. And as you can see, 2019 was a record year for deal flow for us. And so the rebound was much more of a V shape than a U shape. I'd say that was consistent across the industries we look at, probably a little bit higher in healthcare because healthcare saw the rebound pretty fast. Software as well, both survived pretty well through the pandemic, less so on the retail side. Consumer big box side, I'd say we're a little bit more challenging. Areas that were affected by import restrictions and things like that were a little bit slower to recover. The places we saw deal flow were relatively similar. We generally see about 80 to 85% of our inbound opportunities from intermediaries, M&A advisors, investment bankers, and brokers, and that held consistent. I will say notably though, the opportunities that we actually closed on, and we did 3 deals in 2020, ADC and P1 were kind of post-pandemic. Those were relationships that we had with management teams prior to the pandemic. And so, we were able to build relationships, kind of see how they navigated through the pandemic. Candidly, I think the pandemic accelerated some of their desire to go to market, which is probably no shock to anybody here on the Zoom call. And I think will kind of lead to some of my expectations for 2021. But that kind of helped us kind of watch them, see how they reacted through the pandemic, and then, be aggressive to pursue them to help grow kind of post-pandemic. Maybe most surprisingly, I think leverage multiples have been somewhat consistent from what we've seen. We've seen lenders kind of get their arms around kind of the quote unquote COVID adjustment relatively well, particularly with the back half of the year as months kind of normalized a little bit more. And now we're heading into, we're in March or actually April, right, of 2021. So the LTM of those heavily affected shelter in place months are going to start rolling off. And so my anticipation is you're going to see lenders be that much more confident and aggressive and lending into kind of a higher LTM kind of multiple period, but we'll see here over the next couple of months. As a summary here, I don't want to overstep my 10-minute bounds. I think 2021 is going to be a pretty active year. I think with COVID in the kind of rear view mirror, the potential for tax reform kind of in ahead of us here, that creates an interesting storm for entrepreneurs looking to kind of bring on a capital provider. Oftentimes, we talk about it at Family Allergy and at Prairie, it takes a life event for someone to decide that they want to actually go ahead and sell their business, whether it's a partnership issue, a retirement issue, some kind of a risk tolerance issue. And certainly 2020 was by all definitions a life event in terms of how they viewed running their businesses. And so I see with the availability of capital, I think with the kind of uncertainty in the market, I think it's going to lead to continued record deal flow. And I think valuations are going to remain very, very strong. And so it's going to be, I think, a very active 2021. And, I think the challenge for all of us is going to be how to find value and how to be aggressive in a competitive market with a lot of capital sitting on the sidelines. So that's, I wanted to provide some kind of specific kind of Prairie related statistics. Happy to answer questions now or at the end or in breakout sessions, but we are obviously humbled to be invited by the ACG chapter here in Kentucky. And we're very, very excited that you honored Kay, Jim, and the team at Family Allergy. It's been a very eventful 3 years, and it's been a fantastic 3 years. And we couldn't think more highly of the team we have there. Can't be more impressed by the business that they have built and are continuing to build. And we're just thrilled to be called a partner of the Family Allergy team. So I wanted to make that plug for the team here that you're going to hear from later on. But we appreciate everyone's time and attention here today, and happy to answer any questions at the right time.
Great. Thank you, Sean. And it's really good to hear the optimism you have for 2021 and to hear about the past. We'll now go to the Deal of the Year award part of this event. And we had, as we indicated, 2 winners this year, one for small company and one for large company. And that was, largely because of the quality of deals that came through this market this past year. For the small company, the winner was Chad Coulter and Lauren Coulter, who on their sale of Luvino to Steve Ritchie and others. And we're very pleased to have them as award winners. They've went right back in it, as this slide indicates, that with Biscuit Belly, and we'll hear from them.
Hey everybody, my name is Chad Coulter. I'll give a brief background on myself. Lauren, my wife, is on here and as well, so she may want to pipe in on any details I've missed about this transaction. But yeah, a little bit of background on myself. So Lauren and I are both pharmacists by training. We got our first kind of foot in the door with business ownership through a painting and drinking place called Uptown Art, which we had 2 locations here in Louisville. And then we saw a demand for a wine bar, because really, you know, as we all know in Kentucky, it's largely beer and bourbon. So we set out to develop this concept, Luvino, found some great initial staff members, Tavis Rockwell, who worked with us up until the transaction, is still with Luvino, and Danny Greason, who was our first GM. And we kid that one of our first times working in a restaurant was the night that we opened Luvino. So we had literally zero experience in the restaurant world, and developed this concept, which we grew to 5 locations. So we ended up having 2 locations in Louisville, Highlands and Middletown, 2 in the Indianapolis area, which was Fisher's, as well as downtown Indy, and then 1 in the OTR neighborhood in Cincinnati. And really probably ever since the, I don't know, 3rd or 4th month of opening this concept, again, our first location being in 2014 in the Highlands, Tavis, our executive chef, and I have always played around with this idea of a biscuit concept. So it's always kind of been in the back of our mind, and we kind of finally went forward and developed the menu, developed the branding, brought on a partner for Luvino and Biscuit Belly, Chuck Schnatter, a few years ago. And in 2019, we made the Biscuit Belly concept a reality. And it was going so well, and it was really just us and a small team running it, that we saw the scalability, the ability to franchise the model, and obviously had a person being Chuck, a good mentor who has done franchising at Papa John's with his brother for many, many years. So we felt like that was our growth vehicle. It was very hard to go into these different cities and teach people that never knew anything, or maybe never tasted but 1 or 2 wines, 60 wines by the glass, that was Luvino. So it was a very intense from a training perspective and scalability. Biscuit Belly being a fast casual model revolving around the large gourmet biscuit sandwich, we felt like not only is the day part more attractive than being breakfast and lunch only, but again, the economics really made sense. So we started to talk to Steve Ritchie in the fall of 2019 about potentially, he was looking at developing his own restaurant group. And so we started talking to him, and we were supposed to get an LOI in hand basically the week that the Governor Beshear shut down restaurants in Kentucky. And I remember talking to our business broker and Steve. Obviously no one knew what this was going to turn out to be, but you know, just trying to calm Steve down and be like, yeah, no, you know, this thing's gonna last a couple of weeks, like then it'll be over. Let's continue to go down this path. And obviously it didn't, and we're still obviously dealing with it today. So you know, we put the deal on hold in March of last year, and you know, obviously as many other restaurants, we went into survival mode. So we tried to figure out what the landscape was going to look like after this. You know, we had to fire all of our employees as we shut down the restaurant. So we laid off 150, 200 people or so. And yeah, we went to survival mode, opened back up the restaurants in May when all the city and state orders started to relax a little bit. And then we started to talk to Steve again in the summer, and then we closed on the deal December 21st of 2020. So we definitely wanted to have the deal done by the end of the year. We had no idea, obviously, with the new administration coming in, what the taxation, capital gains, all that stuff was going to look like. So we were definitely incentivized to get it done in 2020. So yeah, that's our story. We have since that happened, we used the coronavirus shutdowns as kind of a way to start our franchising efforts with Biscuit Belly. So we did just sign our very first franchisee a couple weeks ago for the Knoxville and Lexington markets. And we should be expecting another multi-unit operator to come on board for Birmingham, Alabama, as well as Huntsville, Alabama. So we hope, our goal by the end of the year is to have about 25 locations in the works in development, and hopefully double that every year thereafter. So that is our growth strategy moving forward. And we obviously love the time that we had with Luvino to grow that to 5 locations, and definitely miss our staff there, and hope to see it continue to flourish.
Well, thank you, Chad. It's a great story. And we've got another great story coming up, which is the large deal of the year winner. And when the judges were picking this, we narrowed it down, first of all, to
Oh. Did Bill just drop off here? Well, well, there he goes. Okay. Well, how about we recognize Family Allergy as the winner of the large transaction of the deal of the year, and invite Kay and Jim Sublett to discuss their transaction.
Okay, so thank you. We really appreciate that. You can see that Kay was out in sunny day with that award, and pretty excited. We are very excited about this. It was totally unexpected. We'd like to thank ACG for their giving us this award this year. So we can go ahead, and this is a shot of one of our offices, but I'll give you a little overview, and then we'll turn it over to Kay for some of the other information. So Family Allergy and Asthma, we were founded here in Louisville by my partner, Steve Pollard, and myself back in 1979. As many of you may recall, interest rates were a little bit different than now. They were up in went all the way to 21%. So I was joking, said it was really 3 partners, myself, Steve, and the banks. But we were able to survive that, and over the years we've grown. One of the benefits we have, we're in a situation where there's a lot of allergy sufferers out there. About 20% of the population, general population, has allergies or related disorders, and about half of those could benefit from seeing an allergist. There's only around 6,000 allergists nationwide, so it's a relatively small specialty dealing with a chronic disorder, asthma being one of the top chronic diseases in children. Actually, the most common reasons children are admitted to the hospital. So a lot of individuals out there who can benefit from seeing a board certified allergy specialist. So over the years, we've had a strategy that was just controlled and contiguous growth in Kentucky and early on in Southern Indiana. Subsequently, we moved into the Cincinnati market, mainly in Northern Kentucky at the time, prior to doing our deal with Prairie. And we also had opened a couple of offices in Indianapolis. One was a small acquisition and another de novo. So by the time it rolled around when we were starting to look for for investors, Family Allergy had grown to around 40 locations in Kentucky and Indiana. We had not crossed the river over into Ohio at the time of our partnering with Prairie. So we come to the point where the partners, we had at that time 12 partners and another 10 or so employed physicians, along with a dozen nurse practitioners. We got to the point that we really understood or felt we needed to have additional capital to accelerate our growth. Even though we were the largest in the country, we knew that there was a lot of pressure for consolidations, especially among the smaller groups. Allergy is unique in that they're not really often acquired by the hospital systems. So it is unique in that, like dermatology and some of the other, what I call retail facing practices like derm and in particular, it is something that we can market ourselves directly to the consumer. We can go to the next slide, please. So we've used a hub and spoke models from the very beginning. At the beginning, it was out of necessity. We opened our first satellite office actually down in the Somerset, Kentucky area in southeastern Kentucky. But we learned early on there was a need out in the state. And over time, we have developed into now 65 total offices using what we call the hub and spoke model. So we have 10 hubs and 55 spoke offices. The hub models are defined as centralized offices that are open daily that provide a full line of services. Spoke offices are open less often, usually 2 or 3 to 4 days a week. They provide the same level of services, including allergy immunotherapy or allergy shots. This provides easier access to the allergy and asthma patients out there who are able to come in and receive their immunotherapy and for their doctor visits without they have to travel great distances. And we are able to do this in a model that is very patient-friendly to our patients. Next slide, please. So our service mix includes office visits, both of new patients and our follow-up patients. Typical patient in allergy is pretty long-term, staying with the allergist 3 to 5 years. We do allergy testing, mainly allergy skin testing in the offices, pulmonary function testing. We're able to do a full range of various pulmonary function or lung function testing. We give allergy shots. We treat things like food allergies, medication allergies, various skin conditions. We see a lot of skin type allergy problems. And in recent years, with the advent of new drugs called biologics, we give a lot of biologics that are available now for chronic severe asthma, chronic hives or urticaria. And we also see a lot of patients with immunodeficiencies that benefit from intravenous immunoglobulin treatment. Our referral mix, as I mentioned, it's a retail facing type specialty. So we get a lot of our patients from direct marketing, office signage, and referrals from families and friends of patients. But we still get around 60% of our patients being referred directly from healthcare providers, primarily the primary care physicians. Our payer mix is a mixture of commercial, government, and direct pay by patients. Mainly commercial. Majority of our payers are commercial payers like Humana and Anthem. So I think the next slide is, we're going to turn this over to Kay Tyler, who's been with our practice for 18 years. Kay is our CEO and has done a tremendous job in leading us as we've grown. So Kay, I'll go ahead and let you take the next few slides, please.
Thank you, Jim. And again, thank you to ACG for this wonderful honor. So we're very excited to be recognized, and it's really just kind of a privilege also to tell you about our story and our relationship with Prairie. So just a few minutes about why we actually chose to bring in a capital partner. And as Jim mentioned, at the time we did a transaction, we had 13 partners that ranged in age from 35 to 70. And some of the partners were anxious to capitalize on that. And also the buyouts of partnerships and the buy-ins of partnerships was becoming extremely costly. And partners were all physicians, and we also were recognizing that there really was a shift in what physicians were wanting in their career. And allergy has become about 60-65% female dominated, and have more concerns about their lifestyle rather than necessarily a partnership track. So we felt like it really wasn't going to be sustainable. Also, ramping of new locations, new providers, it takes time and it takes capital. And we obviously were self-funding that for 40 years. And it really was just kind of stunting our growth, that we were really turning down opportunities to bring in, more providers and add more locations more aggressively, just because of, taking 15, 18 months for us to actually, see it become profitable. The marketplace was really also consolidating in outpatient specialties like ophthalmology, dermatology, and dentistry. And, with us being our size, we wanted to lead the space. And, to our knowledge, there was only one or two other allergy practices that were smaller than us that had done some type of a transaction. But we felt that we really had the model that was going to be attractive in the marketplace. And we wanted to lead that. We really wanted to be on the forefront of it. Our footprint lends itself also well to in the specialty for attraction because of just the states that we're in are high, allergy sufferers: Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio. So right in the Ohio Valley, obviously, is where the allergies sufferers are the strongest. So, we also had already built an infrastructure that was going to be attractive to potential acquisitions. So we had already invested for years in marketing and having marketing plans around physicians and new locations. We also centralized a lot of the business and the back end aspects of running practices. So, that was going to be and has been attractive to the practices that we have brought on. And we also wanted still a vehicle for equity opportunities for the new physicians. It needed to change. It needed to not be as costly, but yet we still wanted to create an opportunity for them to feel that they had ownership in the practice, which we have been able to do. So if you could go to the next slide. So this is what kind of our growth has been since we've joined Prairie. We have almost doubled the number of physicians in 3 years. So we have 55 currently, and we started with 30 back in 2018. The number of locations has gone from 41 to 68. Acquisitions, we've now finalized 11 acquisitions, and we have 3 more that are under letter of intent. And probably in the last 3 years, we've talked to probably 100 allergy practices. So that's kind of a challenge being, new in this space and being leading, is that we're having to introduce the concept to a lot of allergy practices. So that's taken a lot of time, a lot of legwork, but it's been exciting and I think rewarding that we've been able to close on the transactions that we have. We also acquired our largest competitor in Louisville. We did that in the first year, and we added business in Tennessee, Arkansas, and hopefully we're getting ready to add our 6th state. We have a group under letter of intent. Hopefully we're closing on that in the next couple months. And probably the most exciting is that we combined 2 practices and acquired them in Columbus, Ohio. And that transaction actually made us the largest allergy practice now in Columbus, and added 12 offices and 7 in Columbus. So we've had really exciting growth, and we expect to close on 6 total transactions this year. What is kind of our growth strategy? And I think the most important thing, and Jim would, we've had a lot of pride around just what is the culture and what makes Family Allergy so special. And I think that's just what has made us also successful, is that, the essence of Family Allergy is that we just have a very patient-centered experience from beginning to end. Everything we do is really done through the eyes of the patient, and it's our existence. That's why we're here, and that has been a successful model for us. So we strive to have convenient locations, to have convenient hours, that we have easy access, that we cater to the moms who are making most of the healthcare decisions. So we want that culture to be just kind of go throughout all of the practices that we will be acquiring. And so far we've been pretty successful in doing that. So we'll continue to have a regional strategy. We don't, really anticipate that we will, jump to the West Coast or maybe even the Northwest, but primarily Midwest, Southeast, and the Mid-Atlantic. Staying regional helps us leverage payer relationships that may, kind of cross contiguous state lines, and also helps us, have an infrastructure that we can use in multiple states that are going to be close by. We evaluate all groups in these regions that will have, probably 6+ physicians. And we will look to also make sure that there are roll-up opportunities nearby. So we don't want to necessarily have dots on the map. We want to make sure if we find a group that we like that has some size, that we're also going to have others in those markets that would also be opportunities for us as well. We'll continue to maintain a kind of a parallel structure of just not through acquisitions, but organic growth. That's how we have built this practice, and we hire physicians that come out of allergy fellowships. We want to add the spokes to the hubs and continue to build, also through de novos. There are other, we're looking at other specialties that will complement allergy. We have come across practices that have ENT, allergists and ENT. We also ourselves own and acquired a sleep medicine practice about 5 years ago, which has also been, really a tremendous fit for us. So I think there'll be a lot more activity between allergists and ENTs, and looking to see if these two specialties can exist together. So, we'd love to cross 100 million soon, and, hope I see in our future that 150 will be realistic for this transaction. That's kind of why we chose Prairie. And Jim, I'm gonna, after I'll let you make your comments as well, because you were instrumental in this partnership. But they brought obviously capital to the partners and allowed us to, to have meaningful equity in the company. And all the partners that were original partners are still partners and have continued to reinvest as opportunities, which I think is just fantastic that they still all believe and are very supportive of this model. And we now have equity options for new shareholders, new physicians that are coming in. And we've brought on, I think, 7 or 8 as well that have attained certain levels and certain thresholds that have allowed them now to have some equity as well. And, Sean has mentioned, I think he undersold this, but what really was the difference on Prairie is that of all the groups we talked to, they had really done their due diligence on the allergy space. And it felt like we were going to hit the ground running with them. A lot of other groups that we talked to, it felt like we were teaching them about allergy, and it was more transactional. So, but Prairie had spent their time in it and really worked in this space for a couple of years. So for us, it really was a pretty easy decision. They bring a lot of analytics and resources to us that help us with forecasting and driving profitability. Whether we're going to go into new markets, or if we are needing to recruit at high levels, or just looking at different components of the business and what makes it profitable, just really analytics and resources that Prairie has brought that we did not have ourselves. So they've also brought us business as well. So they have been contacted by groups and groups that we didn't know about. So that has happened. And Prairie will also, not be in the weeds, but certainly can be if we need. And from time to time, or sometimes I'm at dead ends, don't know what to do. And certainly will reach out, and they will always, kind of lend a ear and help, kind of guide us and feel like part of help us make decisions as necessary. So Jim, I'm going to let you add to that as well. And thank you all again.
Thank you, Kay. I think you said it very well. I think we were really looking, as this slide says, for a partner. And Sean mentioned that I'd done actually a consulting call with Prairie about a few months, maybe a year before we went out looking for a partner. And, that was, I think we had a good conversation that day, but really as we interviewed the finalists, when we went out looking for an investor, they clearly had a lot of the qualities we were looking for. And as Kay mentioned, we were looking for a partner who could give us advice, not be intrusive in running our business that we had, built up over nearly 40 years to a platform type business. And it's really been a great relationship for the last several years that we've been working together. And they do bring to the table a lot of a lot of things that we did not have as part of our resources at the time we did our deal. So I think it's been great, and it's enabled us to grow in a very controlled yet aggressive fashion is really what we wanted to do. And now we still the candidates we have for that we're bringing into our group, that we're not just looking for someone with a warm body and a pulse. We really want somebody who can come in and add to what we're doing and fit our culture, which is very important, as Kay mentioned, to all of us. So again, I'd like to thank ACG for this honor, and I'll turn it back over. I guess, Terry, are you running the show now?
Yeah. Well, we wanted to congratulate Family Allergy, and instead, in addition to the certificate that we gave Kay the other day, we have a beautiful Waterford Crystal trophy to deliver, and I think Bill Strench will be doing that in person over the next couple of weeks. So just wanted to mention that, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt Berrien, our president, to continue our program.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. At this time, we'll kind of move to a moderate Q&A. As mentioned, if people have questions for our presenters, just feel free to send those along. But may start off with a few that had come in prior to the presentations. Sean, I may start with you. And you spoke briefly to pandemic impacts on valuations, but clearly the pandemic impacted companies very different ways. From results, some saw decreases, some saw record years. So when you all were evaluating companies in the market, how were you taking that either significant decreases or significant increases into account, and how were people that were also maybe in those auctions or in those groups making adjustments as well?
Yeah, it's kind of tale of two, I guess, the have and have nots, right? If you were able to bounce back from the recovery or grow through the recovery. I mean, valuations before March of 2020 were very, very high. And I would say, to the extent that you were of the group that bounced back quickly or kind of grew through it, they're only higher now. And so, I think us at Family, when we've looked at, I don't know how many acquisitions, Kay, we've done over the last 6 months, but it's been, probably five or so with the ones under LOI she was talking about. But, we had the benefit of seeing the back half of the year and, and showing it wasn't kind of a, tell me, it was a show me type of phenomenon. Did you actually bounce back? Are you comping better year over year? And if that was the case, assuming there wasn't any kind of pent up demand in whatever the service was offering, then we got pretty comfortable that kind of 2019 was a good baseline, or trailing 12 through February was a baseline. And so we saw a lot of people looking at 2019 trailing through February of 2020, and then looking at a run rate of the back half of the year, seasonally adjusted, to kind of triangulate to what they thought the performance of the business was ongoing. And so that would essentially validate whatever kind of COVID adjustment was going on. But I would say, just again, to lend some transparent stats, we've looked at a couple of multi-site practices in medical with bids at high single digits, almost pushing double digits. And in most of those practices, we didn't even get an invite past the initial indication stage. And so again, these are all practices in the smaller end of the market, nowhere near what Family Allergy is and the infrastructure that they've built. I think lens gives a little bit of color about what we're seeing in terms of valuations and aggressiveness out in the market.
I guess in any industries you all touch where maybe we saw, technology or anything like that, where record years, 2-3 times what they normally would do. How do you all adjust for that? Is it kind of looking into early 21 and seeing, do we continue the trend there, or, giving some haircut to what's there and saying, is this recurring? Is this going to be the continued trajectory?
Yeah, we're not value buyers, and so we're not trying to look at kind of areas that are out of favor. We're growth buyers, and so areas like healthcare and candidly technology and technology-enabled solutions are areas we do want to lean into. And I think I'm not sure all valuations are justified, but I think the enthusiasm behind them are justified. And so our goal is to find businesses in the smaller market that we can then build scale, that it becomes much more attractive for another larger investor to continue on that growth strategy. And kind of, we want Prairie to be, one hopefully very lucrative and fun stop along the way of the path of a growth of a company. And so we don't shy away from those areas. In fact, those are areas we continue to lean into, but we have to be, I'd say we just want to pick our spots where we feel confident in the team, the partnership, and the growth prospects that we can justify an aggressive purchase price. And that's how we think about it.
No, perfect. Thanks for that insight, because you see different approaches to different groups. So good to see what Prairie's doing there. Kay, I may pivot to you. And Jim, I know, being closely held previously, the way you manage company may look different than the private equity model. There may be a more leveraged company. It just changes to the dynamics of the balance sheet structure. How has it changed how you manage the company? So may get your thoughts there.
I think it just kind of propelled us to a next level of, the infrastructure, kind of became pretty taxed. When you're small, managing all the costs yourself, you're containing your growth, you're, focusing on bottom line month. So this was kind of a challenge of like, some of that pressure was off. We needed to scale, and, the infrastructure, I think, becomes taxed, and you're trying to get ahead of it, and you're trying to hire into it. And, so some of it was just an adjustment of, where were we going to struggle with infrastructure, and where we sufficient, and how do we get there fast enough and think that way. And I think it was hard even for me to think about, don't look at having all these restrictions, which you do when you're, paying the bills month to month. So I think that's my thought. Jim, I don't know if you had any other thoughts.
Well, I think we have had pretty rapid growth, and there's been somewhat, the culture challenges are important to look at. And we've been able to, I think, as I mentioned, one select groups that we can bring in that culturally fit. And then we have I think one thing it's done is given an opportunity for growth within our company by a number of our, now leadership who may have been otherwise hit ceilings as far as their ability to grow into new positions. So that's been a positive. At the same time, because of the rapid growth we've had, there's been challenges at times with just with the culture within the company. But I think we're able to address those in most situations, and it's been a positive, positive overall.
Good, yeah. But I know culture fits can always be a challenge to acquisition. So glad to see you've been able to manage it. Another thing that to maybe where we were talking with Sean and may stay with you, Jim and Kay, COVID impacts. Clearly, you were ones that were probably impacted with reduced, in-person traffic. How did you navigate that? What did the closing process look like for you? Length of time, things like that, restrictions.
Mm-hmm. So, as Sean said, I think the months in 2020 of, March, April, May were brutal. What's a kind of a double whammy for allergy is that's our prime season. So that's usually when those are our strongest months. So it was a significant hit to us that we had, probably a 50% drop in revenue. We did what other businesses had to do is that, we had to take action to furlough some staff. We, looked at some locations where we felt we could scale back services and, in all of this, you're trying to figure out what are patients going to do, and there was really just nobody knew were they going to, how long were they going to sit out? And what we found is that patients that were actually already in treatment and coming in for allergy shots were extremely loyal and felt like they could come safely. It was really just the new patients that looked as like, I'm going to wait and sit out and, maybe wait till this calms down to start services. So that's what happened, but we really tried to strategically, time reopening, and back, I would say by May of last year, we were fully ramped. We had fully reopened. We brought everybody back. And, I'd say at the end of the year, we were down in total of about 15%. So from the 50% in that, our strongest months to the end of the year, I think we ended up, 10 to 15% down for the year.
Did you all see any surge demand as things started to open back up? Maybe people who were sitting on the sidelines who maybe would have been coming in that March, April window and then trying to fit more capacity in a constrained window or limited capacity?
Yeah, it wasn't really like a pent up demand, because I think people, and still today, I still feel like there's still some hesitation of the traffic, that it's, maybe at 95%, but it's still, some people are hesitating coming back in. So I think it was really kind of a slow re-entry, and it didn't, really start feeling back to normal till more towards fall, September, October.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Yeah, I think as Kay said, we still have patients who are hesitant. They're just now coming back after, maybe they should have been in several months ago. They're back after a year. It was interesting. We, on a national level, and this was somewhat regional, but some allergy practices pretty much shut down. In healthcare in general, there was a lot of different, as you know, they shut elective surgeries down, but we were able to put a task force together very early on of not only our clinical staff, nursing and doctors and so forth, representing all of our regions, but also HR, et cetera. And we were able to come up with policies and deal with a lot of the issues that kept us open and kept us going. And I think our patients became comfortable with what we did as far as precautionary steps we took. And we continue that today. We're not, we haven't stopped. We're still looking at that, pretty much on a week by week approach on getting these patients back in safely. And our patients really have appreciated that.
Good. Yeah, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, I'm sure it looks different for what may be perceived as elective procedures versus, required procedures. So I'm sure it just looks different in that space. All right. Thanks, Jim and Kay. I may pivot over to Chad and Lauren real quick. Terry had sent a question over and maybe ties into another one that I thought of when Jim spoke to culture and scaling. Chad and Lauren, what about culture and scaling with you all? With Biscuit Belly, I know has grown rapidly, as you said, and continued growth. as that goes to franchisees and outside of, the larger control of your hands, how do you maintain culture that when somebody goes down to Alabama and visits one of your locations, they get the same experience, the feel that they would here in town?
Yeah, that's one of the tough parts about the franchising model is you don't have ultimate control. I mean, you do, but you don't, because people will typically go rogue and want to do some of their own things. So we do have to keep obviously a close eye on that. But it really just, as cliche and simple as it sounds, we're trying to find people that we get along with personally and we feel are going to be the crusaders of culture that we've tried to establish here in town. And also we're not looking actively for first time restaurant owners, even though that was us at one point. We're not opposed to that, and we are having conversations with those people, but we are looking for those multi-unit operators. For example, our first franchisee that we've signed, he's got 30 KFCs and like 15 Long John Silver. So, and we do due diligence on them because we know people in that realm under the brand's umbrella. And so we're like, hey, well, what do you know about these guys? Are they good people or not? And so yeah, we take them out to dinner. We are with them the entire next day, and we typically get a good feel for the kinds of people they are. And so that's the most important thing for us is, I mean, it's definitely the experience that they have, and they can teach us some things as well. But it's also, are they good people? Do they treat their employees well? Are they going to fit into what we're trying to build?
And I guess the scaling plan, I'll wrap us up maybe with this last question that Terry had posted. What is the long-term ambition for scale of Biscuit Belly? What do you think it's capable of under the current concept? So.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think we can grow this to 100 plus locations fairly easily. I'll put that in air quotes. So yeah, we're not sure. We definitely have ambitions to be the biggest biscuit concept. There's already some pretty big players out there that we're gonna have to catch up to. But I don't know. I think people love the brand. They love the color scheme. They love the food. I think it could be pretty big. I mean, you look at all the burger places out there. We hope that biscuits are the next burger in a way. And we're, as terrible as COVID was for the restaurant industry, our new model, and the first of which will be in Evansville, that'll open in a couple months, will actually have a drive-through. So if that's taught us anything, is that people like the convenience of a drive-through, and you're seeing a lot more brands like Chipotle and Shake Shack and all these big brands that are, traditional fast casual, like fairly gourmet, and they're adding drive-throughs as well. So I don't know. We think it could be an interesting and good revenue stream for us as well as we move forward, and hopefully that'll make the unit economics even more attractive.
Oh, appreciate it. It's exciting to see the scaling to this point. So excited to see where it goes. Excited to see Kay and Jim where things go with you all here in town as well. Once again, as we wrap up, want to thank all of our presenters today. Excited to honor those who won, and Sean, thanks again for just providing some perspective of what you're seeing in the market.